Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Foster Files. My name is Kelly, and I'm a foster with Cross Your Paws Rescue in the Pittsburgh area of Pennsylvania. So, today on the podcast, I have my first repeat guest. I have asked Lauren from Choose Wisely Training to come back on the podcast. I can tell a wealth of knowledge when I meet one, and Lauren is a wealth of knowledge. So I asked her to come on today to talk a little bit about body language in dogs and play behavior. So that if you are considering adopting a dog, adopting maybe a second dog and welcoming multiple dogs into your household, or if you're considering fostering, we're going to throw some tips out there and some behaviors that we both have mutually seen so that you can be better suited to evaluate how that dog is doing and how things are going in your household. So hi, Lauren. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. I'm really happy to have you on. So one of the first things that I wanted to talk about are some mistakes that we see. And it's mistakes that we see people make when it comes to interacting with dogs and signs that are coming from body language that people might miss when they are interacting with a dog. So what are the things that you see out there typically?
So the first mistake I want to call out is thinking the dog park is good socialization. A lot of times it's not. Different breeds of dogs have different types of play. A herding breed has that eye stalk, that back and forth that could also be taken as a sign of aggressive by another breed. So at the dog park, you don't know what you're going to run into. Different sizes, different ages of dogs may not play as well as other dogs would.
I agree. I used to do the dog park back in the day, and it was really a couple of things that got me out of going to the dog park. The first was COVID, sort of being in those close quarters, even outside those quarters with people you don't know. And then the second was sort of the mix of dogs we had. And at one time, as you may know, Michael and I had 5 dogs. So our house was a dog park. So we didn't necessarily need, but then I started to hear more and more like not horror stories, but just not have great interactions. And so for me, it became more intentional that socialization was going to be with dogs whose owners I could trust. Right. So I might not have a relationship with the dog itself to know if I could trust the dog, but I trusted the owner, and that made a big difference for me. So I agree with you. Dog parks are, I don't know, they're not for me anymore, really.
Right. I take my dog whenever there's nobody else because we don't have that fenced in yard that you guys do. So
Mhm.
it's great when she's by herself, or there's something called sniff spot. You can rent out someone's backyard for an hour, let your dog off leash, if it's a fenced in area, and kind of get that benefit without having the dogs that you may not know. I've had dogs kind of go after my own dog. He was dog friendly before that incident. I didn't know any better. I was taking him to the dog park. I lived in Mount Washington. And after the incident, he became a little bit more reactive towards dogs. The dog had gone after him. He had gone back after it, and it escalated a little bit. It wasn't a huge fight, but just enough to make him dog reactive. So after that, I did a little bit more research and found out people don't really, dog trainers don't really condone dog parks for the most part.
Right, right. One of the things that I wanted to talk about when it comes to interacting with dogs and body language is the way that people are communicating for their children to interact with dogs. I'm really sensitive to that. And I have mentioned on here before, I don't have my own children, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and I've been around kids my whole life. And for me, I think there's a difference. I think some people are doing a really great job of teaching their kids, ask to pet the dog, let the dog come to you, that kind of thing. That is, to me, in my opinion, that is the only way to teach your children to interact with dogs. I think that there is just as much harm that can come from expressing to your children they just have to avoid dogs as there is from not, letting your kid run up to every dog there is out there. I think there's just as much harm that can come from that, because I do think that even if you're someone who's not particularly into dogs or fond of dogs, if you just tell your kid to avoid every dog that they come across, they're not actually learning how to positively interact with dogs. And let's be honest, there are going to be very few children that I think come out of the womb that aren't inherently wanting to pet dogs, pet cats, interact with animals, right? We're teaching them that behavior. So don't teach them fear right off the bat. In reality, what you should be teaching them is respect, teaching them not to approach a dog from behind, not to run up to a dog, not to overwhelm a dog, but instead to ask the owner, may I pet that dog? I really think, honestly, for me, that's the only way to go about it.
Right. And that's important even for the child's safety that like my own dog is reactive. We took her to Raccoon a year ago on a really active day. There were a ton of people there. A little girl, probably 6 years old, came running over. I want to pet your dog. My fiance said, no, she's not really friendly. The little girl is hanging on my arm, like, I want to pet your dog. Since then, we've really stayed away from any kind of crowded parks or areas, and we look for an alternative in our local parks. We go to places that don't have as many kids or are as populated.
That's a shame. I'm sorry that that happened to you because you do wonder where were the parents in that situation.
They were right there.
Respectful. I know it's a shame. You need to teach respectful boundaries. I heard someone sometime. We were at a brewery and we were there with some family and some friends, and there was on our side of things there were kids and there was a dog there, and I said, can I pet your dog? Because of course I'm the child in the park that wants to pet every dog. And they said, no, she's a newly adopted dog and she's really skittish. She's not great with new people. Problem. Good luck. I hope everything goes well with her. Well, the children that we were with, one of them kind of kept getting near to the dog. So my husband said to the parent, hey, like, we know that that dog is a newly adopted dog, not great with people. And unfortunately, that parent's reaction was to just say, well, then that dog shouldn't be here. Well, no, you as a parent need to understand you would never let your child just run up and tackle another kid, right? Or run up and tackle an adult. You really have to make sure that your child understands that boundaries when it comes to dogs too. Because a dog that's newly adopted and skittish, no matter what, it could be the friendliest dog in the world and accidents can still happen, especially if the dog does get scared.
Exactly. And it's up to the child to learn interaction with other people and beings because they're not entitled to anything. And that might be an unpopular
Right.
opinion, but
No, they're
that
not. They're not. Just like our dogs are not entitled to go up to other dogs, right?
right.
We have to also make sure that if we're going to be in a scenario with other dogs, we're making sure that that's okay. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. It's really that respect of this other being that you're unfamiliar with. So, for those that are looking to bring a new dog in their home, what are some obvious signs of body language, some indicators that they should be looking for, both for, positive interactions or for also being aware that things might not be going so well? What kind of things do you see?
So you want to be looking for that loose, wiggly body language, the soft mouth. You want to have the dog not leaning too forward because that's a sign of aggression, or leaning too far back. That's a sign of fear. If the dog is like stable on their four legs and they're just standing pretty stable, you want to look for a dog that's not doing the hard stare. I think we've talked about that in the last episode I was in. You also want to make sure that if they are playing, they're taking turns, they're taking breaks, possibly some sneezing. That's a sign that they're both playing rather than starting to escalate into a full-blown fight.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I wanted to talk a lot about healthy play. If you're new to having multiple dogs, you're going to be new to what is healthy play, what is unhealthy play. By itself, is growling and barking considered unhealthy?
Not at all.
No, not at all, right? Growling and barking is just expression. So don't necessarily break things up or pull your dog back just because you hear growling and barking. You need to be able to watch for other signs. Some of the things that I pay attention to, because we bring a lot of dogs into the household and Cheese is very playful. So some of the things that I pay attention to is if her tail goes tucked and she's running away with her tail tucked. So that is a very different style of play than if they're playing chase and they're chasing each other. First of all, chase should never be one-sided. If chase is fully one-sided, you might be in an unbalanced situation where one dog is dominating the other. But if they're running around and chasing each other and their tails are up, they've got, like Lauren said, a loose mouth, you're probably in a really good place as far as pay is concerned. But if you have one dog that's running away from another and their ears are flat and their tail is tucked between their legs, that's not chase, that's fear. And as soon as that dog is backed into a corner, you're probably going to have an interaction.
Absolutely. And going back to, I think, your first question, the mistakes that people make, a lot of people think dogs will work it out. Advocate for your dog. I think we talked about that last time as well. If one dog is dominating your dog or it's not a fair-sided play interaction, make the dogs take a break or end the session for the day.
Yeah, I think that that's a good way to put it too. In the beginning of having Max, Cheese was not always a fan. We definitely had moments of play where you could kind of like feel it and hear it turn, where it would be play, 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 and then all of a sudden one would piss the other off. Usually Max would piss off Cheese. And she would now, when she's going after him with her teeth and saying, "Get away from me." And then he's having to like back up or tuck his tail in turn. Cause even though he probably has 20 pounds on her, she is very much in charge of their dynamic. So for us, what we were able to do is we were able to just kind of verbally correct it right in the moment. And then either separate them for a little bit and just till everybody sort of calmed down, or if they went back at it, make sure that we're continuing to monitor them.
Smart.
I think that's the thing too. I think there's a lot of people who maybe trust a little bit too much. Monitor them, monitor play. Make sure you are seeing sneezing. Another really good sign, in addition to sneezing, is shaking.
Yeah.
When play stops and then they shake, that's a really good sign that they're self calming down. From what I understand. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I think that that's really important. Let's talk about when we get a new dog. What are some body language indicators to look for that that dog might be having a fear issue or could potentially have a reactionary issue? For me, again, it goes back to head hunched, tail tucked, ears flat. And the side eye. Tell me about the whale eye. How would you describe that for people?
So the whale eye is when you see the whites of your dog's eye and they kind of are looking to the side, that they don't want to take their eye off the thing that is scaring them, but they can't look away from it really. We can send some pictures probably with this podcast if I'm not explaining that well enough, but
Oh,
the
that's
side eye,
that's
once you
right.
know what to look for, is a really great indicator of fear or uncomfort.
Yeah, the whale eye is a good one, especially if you have someone approaching like a kid. Little girl, our Esky, would get whale eye with kids. Now, she was really good about just going away. Like when she was uncomfortable around her kid, she would just remove herself from the situation, which we always let her do. That's another thing, too. If we can go back to the kid thing real quick,
Yeah.
never let your child chase a dog. The dog might look like it's having fun. You very easily can interpret it running away from the kid, just like you can with the dog, as it's having a good time and it's playing chase. But unless you are in a scenario where you have seen this over and over again and you know those two are okay with each other, don't let your child chase a dog. That's a good way for that child to get a correction for
Right.
sure.
Exactly. That's a good call out.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about eye contact. What do you understand about eye contact between humans and dogs? Because we are noticing that that is definitely a trigger for Max with new people. If they make eye contact with him, I can make eye contact with him. Michael can, but new people, not so much. So tell me a little bit about what you understand about that.
So eye contact can be construed as an aggressive sign. On the flip side, I've taught my dog engagement, so I've encouraged her to make eye contact with me as a way of checking in. So it depends on the context of the eye contact. If it's a new person and they're approaching straight onto the dog, that could be really considered aggression. In a lot of the shelter areas, they tell you to come to the dog from the side, don't necessarily make eye contact, toss some treats. So everything's a lot more relaxed because you're not doing this hard, what they perceive as a hard stare, like we just talked about in the play context. If you're doing a hard stare coming directly at them, a shelter dog especially is already stressed out. They can construe that as aggression. A dog that you don't know could also see that hard stare from you and think that you're making an aggressive act towards them.
Right, because that's what they're gonna do when they're really focused in on something, right? So, like,
Right.
if they're hard staring at a rabbit or a squirrel or another dog, you are learning that on your end, that's something that means that they're focused and they're ready to pounce. So, from the opposite, if they feel like you're hard staring at them, they might think, oh, this thing's gonna pounce at me. I better pounce at it first.
Or if someone's staring at you from a distance and you're like, okay, what is going on? Does this person want to fight me? Or do I have something in my teeth?
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Like, how would you feel if a stranger was just staring you down?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really simplified way to put it. I know you have a number of mentors that you work with and deal with and learn from. One of them that you've mentioned before is Amy Cook, who talks about the play way. Can you elaborate that on that a little bit?
Yeah, so she has this great way to bond with your dog that you don't use food, you don't use toys, you just do subtle signs to see if your dog actually wants to play with you. So, doing like a more aggressive type chase, you would sit on the floor with your dog and do like, I'm gonna get you, not touch them, just maybe make a little like hand signal. If that's too much for a scared dog, kind of keep your hands on the ground. If they approach you, they want to play with you. And then from the more retreating aspect of like the play chase game for the human side, you can kind of like turn, say, I'm going to get you, maybe like duck and roll, have your dog see if they'll interact with you by like putting their head underneath where your head is. It's a really, really great way to build a bond, but it's also a really great way to learn your dog's own language. Like I would do that with Emma when we took the class at Fancy Sport Academy, and she'd walk away like she's not engaging with me. She doesn't want to play, and that's fine. I mean, that's up to your dog if they want to interact with you on that level, great. But it's a really great way to build the bond without the toys, without the food, and you learn about your dog and what they're saying to you, and that would translate to how they interact with other dogs as well.
So by you interacting with them with play without having kind of a secondary trigger, you're able to then understand your own specific dog's body language. What does play look like?
Yeah,
And
you
then
learn this little
specific
cues
person.
that you probably wouldn't pick up otherwise.
I love that. And that was Amy Cook, The Playway, for
Yeah.
those who are wanting to look that up. Another thing that's so incredibly important is to understand that from the time that they come out of the womb, play is really important for dogs. So, talk to me a little bit about some of the tips and the things you want to look for in play amongst puppies and young dogs.
So there's a critical period, which is a period of growth within dogs that they need to hit that so they learn bite inhibition. That's up to 16 weeks old. So when you have a single puppy or when you have possibly a litter that was taken away from their mother a little bit too early, play is very, very important to teach the bite inhibition, social cues. So you may not always have like another puppy to have them play with, but there's other options. You can have them play with an older dog. You want to socialize them in very specific contexts to make sure that they are a capable of reading the body language, of being able to interact and play with other dogs, of knowing that bite inhibition, which is when a dog mouths you, if they, heaven forbid, would mouth you for any reason, they don't bite all the way down. Like they know their bite strength that's crucial for a dog human interaction, a dog interaction. I mean, obviously we don't want our dogs to bite at all, but if they do, a level 2 is a lot better than a level 4.
Right. And that inhibition is taught by the two puppies essentially nipping and herding at each other. So when they hear that squeal and that other dog doesn't want to play with them, it sort of ingrains in them, oh, that was too much.
Right. Or the mother teaches them whenever the puppy is going after her for milking, then she does a little cry whenever it's a little bit too much, that they learn that way too.
I had actually heard that because we had a pretty young dog here that we were fostering. I think it was Lily, and she, good Lord, she would mouth you and it hurt. And I had read online, yelp. Every
Yeah.
time she bites, just yelp. And it's enough to like help teach them that inhibition, like you said.
Exactly. I had a young one, Tony, that we did the same thing. Taught him when it was a little bit too hard for an interaction.
Yeah, because those puppy teeth are sharp.
Yeah.
They are. They can be really sharp. So, is there anything else when it comes to body language and interaction or play that you would like to pass along to people?
Yeah, play is a great way to relax your dog, to get out some excess energy, and it just relaxes your dog. It also builds bonds. So if you are looking to get two dogs united, possibly slowly introduce them to play, supervised play, never leave a dog that you're not sure of, like never leave a new dog or a foster dog unattended with your resident dog, and also monitor it as the dog gets older. Unfortunately, I've heard a couple stories of like a small, tiny dog and a older dog not, or a big dog not necessarily getting along towards the end, and like the bigger dog kills the small dog. So
Hmm.
keep an eye on the interaction and the relationship as it progresses, and make sure everybody is safe.
I'm really glad you brought that up. And you guys can't see Lauren, but right before she said the bigger dog kills the other dog, she kind of winced. And I'm sure that that is coming from not only a place of this is such a horrible thing to have happen in a household, but it's also an uncomfortable thing to talk about. But we're not here to, you know, paint this all as a pretty picture. It does happen and it can happen. I know of two incidences personally where it did happen. And an older, smaller dog was killed by a younger dog that was bigger than it. So Lauren is exactly right. I think that if there's nothing bad about saying this situation can't be unattended, can't be left unattended. And if anything, that's incredibly responsible. I want to go back to the kid thing because I just saw on social media a family that lost their dog and they put up all these pictures and they had lost the dog. And there was more than one picture of their kids in the dog's crate with the dog. And Lauren just made a very long blink. Tell me, I'm going to say my thoughts, but you tell me yours first because you're the expert here. Go ahead.
You're just asking for trouble if you have your dog and a kid in a small, closed, confined space. That the crate should be your dog's safe space. And when they go in there, you shouldn't pull them out. You shouldn't grab them. You should kind of leave them alone. That's their space to go for their time out. Having your kid crawl in there. I've seen actually, there's a trainer on Instagram that I think has his kid go in the crate while his dog's eating. That's just asking for disaster.
Oh my God,
Like
that's two red
it's
flags
a
right there.
toddler too. That
Jesus.
it's, I mean, there's not all trainers are created equally. There's a lot of bad
Right.
theory. There's not a lot of regulation in the industry. So know who you're working with and know what they stand for.
And the thing is, too, Lauren, you know this and I know this. It only takes one incident. It only takes one for there
Right.
to be a dog now that is a dangerous dog and is immediately loses its life. Or, God forbid, a child loses its life. Like, that is not okay.
Right.
So I am part of the app team at Cross Your Paws as well. And I'm not running a ton of apps these days, but I do run them for my fosters and I have run them for other dogs in the past. Lauren, you're part of the app team as well. You and I have talked about that. I had an applicant one time that I looked at their social media because we do, guys, we look at your social media. It gives us an idea of who you are as a person. And that's just reality. Just like if you were going on a date, you'd look up somebody's social media. But they had pictures of their grandchildren riding their dog. And the grandchildren's feet weren't off the ground. So you're not talking about a situation where they're actually like putting all their weight on the dog. But it was enough for me to go, this is not a situation that I want our dogs going into because those boundaries are not being respected. And you don't want a situation where now this dog has bitten somebody and this could have been avoided. So there is a balance that we have to strike as a rescue between educating someone and saying, hey, I saw this picture. That's not okay. I mean, come on, that's a hard thing to say where now you have somebody who's angry or who's leaving the rescue a bad review. But you also don't want to put the dog in a bad situation where a kid could be harmed, the dog could be harmed, and that's even worse than just letting the dog stay in foster for a little longer and get another application. I mean, Lauren, you're nodding your head, but these are real considerations we have to make.
Exactly. And unfortunately, kids are normally right at the dog's level for getting a bite in the face.
Right.
I mean, that's also really sad when that happens to a child. But I mean, unfortunately, dogs are sentient beings that are going to protect themselves when they feel threatened.
Yeah. I mean, all it takes is one interaction for things to go sideways. And again, I just want to kind of reiterate, you advocating for your dog, you advocating for what's going on with the situation, monitoring play, that's not you saying that this is a bad dog or this is a dog that I don't trust. I trust Cheese and Max immensely. Neither one of them has made any indication at all that they would ever be aggressive towards Snowball. That does not mean that I'm going to completely discount their biology and the fact that these things can happen just like on a dime. Like I said, I personally know of 2 situations where the older, smaller dog has been killed. So it doesn't mean I don't trust them. It doesn't mean I don't love them. It just means that I'm aware that sometimes things can go south.
Right.
So we can go ahead and wrap this one up today talking about body language. We will leave some links. Lauren sent me this really great video in preparation for this recording where she talked about, or the person in the video talked about different body language indicators. I will link that video in the show notes. Lauren, if there's any other resource that you would like to send over that I can link in the show notes, that would be amazing. Just to give people some references and things to look at. But yeah, those are some of the experiences that Lauren and I both had that we wanted to make sure that we pass along. Do you have anything else you want to leave us with today, Lauren?
Yeah, I'm going to ruin Instagram for everybody listening to the podcast. And I think Kelly mentioned some of the interactions with children posted on Instagram. Look at the dogs. Look for that whale eye we talked about. Look for the leaning away, all those cute pictures of kids. If you look at the dogs, are going to give you a whole nother picture for the most part. So study your body language. If you have any questions, email Kelly or myself, and we can do some translation and teach you how to speak dog.
Let's just remember to protect boundaries, advocate for our dogs, and as adults and as responsible people, make sure that we're paying attention. So thank you, Lauren. As always, I'm sure I will have you on again and ask for your expertise. Remember, guys, you can find Lauren at choose_wisely_dog training on Instagram. She is an incredible resource, and you do offer virtual sessions as well for anyone that might be outside of the Western PA area. You can follow the podcast at the Foster Files Podcast on Instagram. You can email me at the fosterfilespodcast@gmail.com. And thank you so much, Lauren, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
For today's Foster Spotlight, I'm going to talk about senior girl Twinkie. Twinkie is with Cross Your Paws, so she's local here in Western Pennsylvania, and she's in need of either a foster or adopter. The foster that was taking care of her broke her foot, and so now she can't continue to take care of Twinkie. Twinkie is a senior girl. She is a gray pitty, and boy, is she sweet looking. You definitely got to check her pictures out. They estimate that she's anywhere from 9 to 10 years old, and she was originally adopted from Cross Your Paws a few years ago. She was moved around a lot, and then we found out as an organization that she had been abandoned. So she's been through a lot, probably more than most. She does need to be in a calm home. She does love people. An elderly couple or an adult-only home with not a lot of activity is going to be ideal for her. She is considered part of our Forever Foster program, which means that her medical care and any medical needs she would have in the future would continue to be covered by Cross Your Paws until the end of her life. She is not dog friendly. She is not cat friendly. And young children are not going to be a good mix for her given her age and demeanor. But if you are looking to bring on a senior dog, bring on a Forever Foster, and you can find it in your heart to show this wonderful girl a better end to her life than what she had in the beginning, certainly it would be an amazing story to tell. Little bit of a foster spotlight update. We talked about Rousey a couple of episodes ago, who was with Animal Protector Shelter in New Kensington for a total of 4 years. Well, she was adopted this week, the week of September 15th, when this recording is happening. So congratulations to everyone at Animal Protectors and congratulations to Rousey. Thank you all for listening and for paying some attention to these incredible stories we have. So I wanted to add an aside to the next few episodes here in September of 2025, because on today, which is September 15th of 2025, I became aware of a situation in Montana I think is worth talking about. So I'm going to put it to the end of the next few episodes here to bring some light. The Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter in Billings, Montana, on September 10th, had to be completely evacuated of all people and all animals. It turns out that the crematorium that is utilized to euthanize animals, not just by the rescue, but by veterinary clinics in the area, is sometimes rented out by government officials to dispose of evidence via incineration. And on September 10th, smoke filled the rescue. The rescue was promptly evacuated. Fortunately, no people and no animals were harmed in this situation. But it turns out that the evidence that was being burned was methamphetamine. So everything in the rescue is likely going to have to be destroyed. In addition, even 36 hours after this incident, the rescue was still unable to be occupied. So now we have displaced animals, displaced volunteers, and ultimately chaos. And what you've probably learned over the course of listening to this podcast is that these rescues need every bit of help they can possibly get. So I encourage you that if you want to help this rescue, they are struggling right now. If you read the statement on their website, Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter, their director talks about what they need right now. And what they need right now, more than anything, is donations. Monetary donations, supplies can be sent to them, because ultimately everything that had to be thrown out needs to be replaced. And it's not like these rescues have reserves of cash to be able to just replace all of these items. My husband brought up a really good point. He said, wouldn't that potentially be an insurance claim? And he very well could be correct. It really just depends on the type of policy they have and whether or not there's any exclusions for government action, which there could be. I actually do know a lot about that, so there very well could be. But either way, even if they do end up getting an insurance payout, there's going to be a deductible involved. There could be time associated with that. And then, of course, they will likely see their premiums increase as a result. So say what you want about insurance, there's probably going to still be some financial consequences for this rescue, even if they are able to file a claim. So let's not necessarily get into the nitty gritty of who should do what Let's focus on what we can do to help. And I joke around a lot that this podcast has like 30 consistent followers. If every one of those 30 consistent followers just sent over $5 via Venmo or on their website, that's $150 that they didn't have before. So I encourage you, again, go to the website. They have a statement about exactly what happened. Please don't trust any social media articles that you see that are from unverified sources. Their website is www.yvas.org. You can also send them money directly via Venmo at YVAS_MT. Please be careful who you're sending the money to. I went to do it tonight, and there was a second duplicate account with a second underscore. So make sure that you're sending it to the correct Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter Venmo. And of course, I'm sure if you subscribe to Amazon or a place like Chewy, they may have wish lists up on there if you would prefer to donate supplies. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening. And thank you for any generosity that you can share with the shelter in need.